Welcome to DCS Pathways. I'm Kevin Patton, Pathways Counselor for Dublin City Schools. Choosing courses and planning for life after high school can feel overwhelming. The ideas and resources shared here are intended to help students and families with this important process. Hey everyone, thank you if you're joining us live. My name's Kevin Patton. I am the Pathways Counselor for Dublin City Schools, and I'm excited to be joined virtually by a great group of professionals from the field of human services today. We have some very different backgrounds and different types of opportunities being represented in that field, and that's our goal with these panels, is just to get you thinking about things that maybe you haven't thought of, even though you know you might be interested in maybe pursuing some opportunities in this field, because there's some great ways to help and support communities and students and kids and adults and all kinds of different people in these types of roles. So I'm excited to introduce you to some of the people that have joined me today. So before I turn things over for the introductions, there is a chat feature on here. So if you have any questions or if you think of anything you'd like us to address before we tune out, please go ahead and feel free to type that in the chat feature, and we'll do our best to get to those questions before the end of the conversation. So without further ado, I'm going to turn things over to Shelby Mitchell from Syntero.
Hello, my name is Shelby. So I am a mental health clinician as well as a supervisor with Syntero. I currently oversee all of our school-based programming in Delaware and Morrow counties, as well as providing direct service to students at the Columbus State Delaware campus. As far as how I got into this role, I got my bachelor's degree in psychology. I've always been very interested in psychology and neuroscience, and knew that I wanted to take a path with more direct service with counseling. So I got my bachelor's degree in psychology from the University of Mount Union. Then I went on to get my master's degree in social work at The Ohio State University. And when I was in high school, I think that my thought was that I would be a teacher. And then I went to college and realized that I like working more one-on-one with kids and adolescents. And so I learned to kind of hone that in and took it in the direction of mental health counseling. So a little bit different as my career progressed. And then as far as an interesting role in this field, social workers and counselors can work in all different environments and various settings, which is awesome. There's a lot of there's a very vast majority of things that we can do. I would say right now on the rise, we're seeing like nursing homes are in need of a lot of counseling for the geriatric population. So that is probably something that might not be on people's radar, but is definitely a growing need in this field.
Good. All right. We'll turn things over to Tatiana.
Thank you so much. First of all, thank you for the invitation. That's a pleasure to represent this field. My name is Tatiana. I'm representing CLCWORKS. Currently, I'm in an administrative role, but I went all the way from being a student in our organization as I came to America 6 years ago, and now in this career, and now in administrative role, and do some finances. As well as my education is finance. I did my bachelor in accounting and economics way back to Russia, and I did my master in finance. And kind of following this introduction, my pathway and role in the field of human services is probably not traditional one. This is what I deeply appreciate as well, and this is an experience that I can now transfer to our participants. So I grew up in Russia, where human services are not as in that capacity as in America. So my experience was mostly shaped by my family's experience. I was a family of my father was a family of 11 siblings, so it's a lot of like community engagement. Family rose from poverty itself through education and entrepreneurship and empowerment through education, hard work. And this kind of instilled those like qualities and values in me that I now translate to. I also, from the very young age, had a huge desire of helping vulnerable youth, and I did it through my experience with sport coaching. So I'm also the first one attending college from my family. So this all kind of shaped lately realization and my understanding and finding myself in this human service field. But by my mentors, I was more guided toward this finance and accounting and economic degree. But now it also helping me to grow in this career and being more helpful to, again, participants with my knowledge and my training. So that's how I ended up in human services through like a little bit not conventional pathway. In terms of interesting roles, I would also talk about geriatric field and need for geriatric support as aging population is growing. And I also would mention AI. And so I think in the future, because if we're talking about students, current high school students, they will be those professionals like in 10 years, 15 years. So AI assisted navigators. So this is something that people might not consider right now, especially human services, but I think it will be needed and popular. And it's also related to the field where we are at with CLCWORKS, and we're training and employment. So things and training will be needed.
No, that's great. All right. And then Dr. Drew Moss from Columbus State.
Yes, hi everybody. I'm Drew, and I'm a licensed professional clinical counselor, so an LPCC. I'm also a licensed independent chemical dependency counselor. So as that credential suggests, a lot of my work has been in the addictions field, and I'll talk about that a bit in a moment. But I'm an instructor at Columbus State in the Social Work and Human Services program, and so I teach classes related to broad human service, whether we're talking about service with adolescents, children, the geriatric population, or specific needs like addiction. I teach a lot of the addiction-specific courses as well. I like what Tatiana said about a conventional path to human services, because I'm starting to wonder if there is such a thing. But we all kind of find our way, I think, in this field to things that spark our interest and creativity. And so I was not planning on teaching initially. Unlike Shelby, that was not my initial goal. But I wanted to be a psychologist. I think that was my first thought. So I majored in psychology at OSU and got a degree there and really didn't know what to do next. And so I learned about a counselor education program. It was a graduate program that still exists at OSU. And the focus of that education was more of the clinical counseling. And that's what I knew I wanted to do at that point. So learned about that, completed that master's degree in counselor education, and worked for about probably 15 years in the field or so, in different roles, direct care roles, leadership roles. You really get to experience a lot of different things if you choose to. And then I fell in love with teaching, just kind of through an opportunity that Columbus State made available through an adjunct position. And now that's what I do full time. I also get to work with clients in private practice on the side. So you find these things that you love. And I think that's the beauty of human service work. You can explore things throughout your career. I will talk just briefly about the substance use disorder or addiction specific work that I think is always a need in our field. There are, tremendous issues with alcohol and drugs. And in particular, we've seen things with the opioid crises across several communities, and certainly here in Central Ohio. So there's always a need for human service workers who are able to extend compassion to people who are struggling with addiction, extend resources, to not be judgmental of that very difficult experience, because it is challenging. And there's a lot of benefit to seeing people kind of heal throughout that process too. It's not all difficulty. There's also a lot of joy on the other side too. And I think another area of service that's starting to trend a bit is looking at reentry. So folks who have experienced legal issues because of alcohol drug issues or because of mental health issues. The way that the court systems are starting to address these things is changing, thankfully, and it's becoming much more human service oriented. So there are specialty dockets that exist where people receive extra counseling, extra support. And so it's a very dynamic field, and there's a lot of need. And I think if you have interests in a variety of things, this is potentially a very good fit for you professionally.
I love hearing that, because certainly for a long time I feel that people who have made those big mistakes in life haven't had a fair opportunity to come back and really regroup, get things together, and make those improvements that we should all be given the opportunity to make. So I love that that's a growing area of need for jobs and for people to go and help rehabilitate and just kind of get people back to a place where they can, feel good about their lives again and not feel so ashamed.
Absolutely. So important.
Yeah. All right. Well, Shelby, I'm going to start with you on some questions that I prepared. So I know we've already talked about careers in social work and how they take place in a variety of settings. And I think Syntero is a great example because we have counselors in our schools through Syntero. We have counselors that are in private practice through Syntero. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about the different roles that are available specifically at Syntero. And then, we talked about the counseling roles that are maybe for the geriatric community and nursing homes and things like that. But maybe if there's any other environments as well outside of the school and in private practice that students should be aware of.
Yeah, so Syntero, yes, I work specifically in our community-based programming, which some of the community-based programming that we offer is working with students K-12. That's kind of where I got my career started, and where I would say my specialty is working in the schools with students, meeting them where they're at. Syntero also offers our outpatient programming, which includes substance use treatment for intensive outpatient as well as regular outpatient, a little bit of the difference between that. So intensive outpatient, we're seeing people like 2 to 3 times a week for a couple hours at a time. It's a more obviously intensive program. And so we have substance use programs for intensive outpatient as well as mental health for adolescents. As well as just outpatient counseling for mental health and substance use, which usually includes once a week to once every other week, depending on the need of that client. And that is in an office setting. We also have quite a few programs that a lot of people might not know about. So working with individuals that are developmentally disabled in our Goodwill program. We have case management. We do actually provide services to SourcePoint, which is a nursing home up in Delaware County. So we have a wide array of programs that we serve, as well as working with like police officers and first responders in the community to provide mental health support to them as well. So I think Syntero does a really good job of showing the variety of jobs that you can have in this field. To kind of clarify, we are a local nonprofit community mental health agency, which provides a very broad array of services. You might notice that as you look into this field more, various settings provide more niche services. So you can work in the hospital setting. I worked there for a couple years providing like biopsychosocial assessments to patients that would come in for into the emergency department. There are also social workers that will work to provide more case management services in hospitals, such as getting them linked with resources outside of the hospital or within the hospital, just helping to get them linked to their communities so that they are able to leave the hospital and feel that they are going out into an environment where they feel supported. So hospitals are a great setting. Dr. Moss had mentioned private practice. That's another a very common path that mental health clinicians, social workers, counselors will go into. And that's really much more independent than a lot of these other settings where either you're working with just a few other people or you're working by yourself, providing direct mental health counseling. We have doctors' offices where people are working with patients and, again, linking them with care, providing them with short-term mental health support. And then I think a common one that a lot of people think about when we're looking at the social work field, for instance, is child protective services. And so there, has always been a long-standing myth that is what social workers do, and that is definitely an option. And so really the goal of social workers in that role is not necessarily to remove children from homes unless it is an unsafe environment, but more so to get families linked with the right resources that can help them thrive as a family and maybe provide them with some education and really just help get that family to a place where it's a more sustainable and stable environment for the kids. So that is, a pretty traditional social work role that I think a lot of people consider when they're thinking about social work. I would say there's also another like niche population or a niche area that social workers can work in is for lawyers. I know that's kind of something that we don't always think about, but there are like law offices that will take on social workers to work with their clients around a variety of things, whether that is helping them process, really traumatic things that they need to work through in order to be a part of, a case. So there's a lot of opportunity out there for social workers, counselors and everybody under this human services umbrella. The last one I was kind of thinking was like the government. The government employs a lot of social workers. There are so many government agencies where social workers and counselors are desperately needed, whether that is with like the health department or anywhere else within the government. So that's another area. And we really provide services in this micro or macro level. And when I went to graduate school, that was one of the things that you tried to parse out, like which one you wanted to go into. And that is unique, a little bit more unique to, I think, social work than some other licensures, is that we will take a look at, like, would you rather work on that macro level where you're doing more programmatic implementation and strategic planning, advocacy work, and doing more of that, like in the community, broad work versus the micro level, which is more of the direct service, one-on-one, typical counseling or like group settings. So that's a little bit of quite a few of the roles that you can go into in this field. Like I said, there's a lot. And I think the cool thing about human services is it's such a wide array. And if you find that you get into one area and you find that that's just not for you, there are so many other opportunities out there. And it allows us the chance to stay in this field for a very long time without feeling like we have to stay in one specific area.
I think it's great. There's a lot of different ways to help and to support people. And I think most of us are in life not going to start a job and do that job forever, right? That's what we tell our students: prepare for changing and shifting gears many times. And it doesn't mean you have to totally go from one career field to another, but it's nice to pick an area of interest that has so many avenues, because sometimes you do just reach a point where you need a new challenge and you want to try to support in a new way. You want to go from that micro level to macro level, or you want to try to now manage the people who are providing the support versus being, the one that's providing it on a day-to-day basis. So I think it's great that students understand there's much more to this field than I think a lot of them realize if they've thought of being a social worker or a counselor. That's the whole idea of these conversations, is to try to open their eyes to things that they can do that maybe aren't on their radar at the moment. So I think that's great that you've kind of given such a great spread of options for them to consider. So the next thing I wanted to ask you, and I know we talked a little bit about your path to becoming a social worker, and it included graduate school. I'm curious, what are some of the different licenses that are most common in your field and the educational requirements to earn them?
Yeah. So I had mentioned I'm a social worker, which means that my license is a licensed independent social worker. Dr. Moss had mentioned he's an LPCC, so licensed professional counselor. We do very similar things, and our schooling is almost identical, just the programs are a little bit different. So you have social workers, counselors, psychologists, there's psychiatrists in our field, marriage and family therapists. There is a wide array of different paths that you can take to get into this work. Most of them require at least a master's degree. However, if you're doing a little bit more of the macro work, you can sometimes have a bachelor's degree. And that bachelor's degree is generally going to be as a licensed social worker, so an LSW. So you'd get your bachelor's in social work. Some people also have their bachelor's in psychology and are able to find some careers in the human services field with a bachelor's in psychology, but it's a little bit more limited. So I will say that the best opportunity to find the job that you're looking for is to go get your graduate degree, get your master's degree. Usually, if you are trying to go the route of psychiatry or psychology, though, generally you have to get a doctorate for that. There is an option as a psychologist to get your master's, and that can also help get your foot in the door in this field. But for psychiatry, for instance, one thing that I think I hear a lot in my work, especially for my clients, is people don't know the differences between what we all do, right? There are so many terms and so many acronyms, and it can get really confusing. And I totally get it. It's a lot. And psychiatrists are usually the ones that are prescribing the medication, and they've actually gone to med school. They, are considered doctors. They have that medical training and then have specialized in psychiatry as their specialty. So that's a little different from the other degrees that we have in our field. However, social workers, licensed professional counselors, psychologists, marriage and family therapists, we can pretty much all do the same thing. We have the ability to do assessments as well as one-on-one mental health counseling, group counseling, in all of the settings that I had just mentioned. The only difference between that would be like psychologists that usually have their doctorate degree will either sometimes teach, or they might do a lot more assessments. So they might do some psychological testing for autism, ADHD, or any other mental health disorders. So there are definitely a lot of licensures and paths that you can take to getting to these roles. But I would say more often than not, you're looking to probably get your master's degree in order to find that specialty you're looking for.
That's great. I think that's an important thing for them to understand, and especially in a field that, depending on the role, is not always known for being the most money that you can make in the world of work, but it's people who are drawn to it aren't drawn for that reason. But I think it's important that you recognize it is a lot of school. So really be thoughtful about how can I get a lot of school for very little money out of the way as early as possible through College Credit Plus programs in high school, through opportunities at places like Columbus State Community College, through all these different ways of making sure that you're not saddling yourself up with a lot of debt when it comes time to then finish your graduate program and then start working, making money. And certainly if it's not a lot at that point, you don't want a big portion of that going to paying down student loan debt. So I think it's important, though, that people recognize it is a big commitment to get educated before you're qualified to do a lot of these different jobs. So. And
I will say on that point too, a lot of people don't know this, and they won't tell you this in school, is that if you are working for a nonprofit and you commit to doing that, the nonprofit working for the government or at a school for 10 years, you can enroll in the Public Service Student Loan Forgiveness Program, which is an awesome program for anybody looking to go into that nonprofit world. And being in the human services field, we can all, like you said, Kevin, attest to the fact that we don't get paid the big bucks, like the lawyers.
Corporate bonuses don't come your way when you do a really great job rehabilitating somebody.
Absolutely.
They should.
Yes, they should. But yeah, and so it is like a really good opportunity when you're looking at graduating to say, like, how can I do some really good work in the community, as well as focus on, my own finances and getting my student loans forgiven. It's a great program to take a look into.
Nope, that's awesome. I'm so glad you bring that up. All right, Tatiana, I'm going to move to some questions I have prepared for you. So I know CLCWORKS supports our students and in a lot of different ways, and our local communities in a lot of ways. So while I know it's rewarding to provide such great support services, I also know it can be very challenging work at times. What are some of the greatest challenges that you and the professionals in your organizations have found to be associated with the work in human services?
Yeah, thank you for this question. It's a very important question. I would like to, though, emphasize the rewarding nature of this job. It is very rewarding as we work with empowering humans and we work with changing communities. So this piece is very important. And I want to mention the scope of services CLCWORKS offer, because there are thousands of organizations in human services that employs hundreds of thousands of people, as we all do different and offer different kind of services. So it might be like a little bit confusing. And sometimes people can think that it's all around like counseling and all around like mental health, but there are any type of advocacy in the community, any type of need can be addressed through the nonprofit work and human service work. So at CLCWORKS, we do offer services around training, education, employability, civic involvement, and promoting family stability and support. So we cover ages starting from 5 years old, where we offer after-school summer camp, helping kids with social emotional learning and improving their grades, and at the same time families to be able to, like single mothers or full families, to be able to go to continue their education or work on their employment. And we work in high school settings with students to help them navigate different career pathways. And we work with adults in a space of New American area to help them learn English, help them acculturate, help them to navigate the complexity of new world. And we also help people with stabilizing their housing. We are part of a stable housing initiative in Columbus. So just to give some understanding of what we do. And as I said, this work is very rewarding, but at the same time can be challenging. And the primary challenge is coming from working with the complexity of human beings. So we work with humans, and it's rewarding. Always support them for growth, for change, empowering, but realizing that changes are not coming instantly and they are not something that we can notice in a matter of day or a week can be very challenging, especially if we are so passionate about those changes that we see in our organization. We have a lot of coaches. So coaching is all about envisioning that path and helping participants to envision it too, but it can take time. So whether it's mental health, housing insecurity, or like some family dynamics, the outcomes are not always immediate. And being patient and being motivated, being positive, have this positive attitude, it's very important, but can be challenging. So we all looking into supporting each other in this role. When you move to more leadership roles, of course, you can face other challenges, limiting amount of resources, or sometimes the work you do might not be as recognized. Our work is funded a lot of the time by the government or some other organization, foundation. So we do work on a grant basis. So our leadership face a challenge in terms of securing funding, making sure that, because staff becomes a part of a family, and we do not operate on a grant terms like some of the nonprofit can operate. So we need to make sure that our funding continues, or we are always looking into ways of how to stabilize our funding too. So we retain those talents who are a part of our organization, because it is very important. As we form relationship with clients and participants, we cannot just stop those relationships because people tend to rely on us. They tend to come back to us and they seek this support. So these are some challenges on the level of leadership who implement programming or like work around the very strategic initiatives. And sometimes stigma around seeking help and being in this space of needing help, needing assistance is also prevalent on both sides of participants and on the side of community. So we need to do a lot of education and continue educating both funders and liberate this field of human services and educate on the nature of services we do, because sometimes we go and talk about it and it sometimes feels like it's too good to be true, and people sometimes ask like, what's the catch? Why are you doing all of this? So we try to educate more and more and let them realize that we are here for them, and it's actually okay and beneficial for them to seek help, and we are here for them almost 24/7. Sometimes we sleep, sometimes we need rest. So yeah.
Well, you definitely need to take care of yourselves when you're doing this line of work. You have to rest and really maintain your own personal mental well-being and health so that you can provide the amazing services that you're out there doing. And I'm so glad you shared all these different ways that CLCWORKS, supports our community. And I think it's such just admirable work. You're doing things for people who are in greatest need, who are showing up and not only don't speak the language, but are trying to get back on their feet. And to your point, they're wondering, are these people really trying to help me, or are they trying to take advantage of me? And it would be such a scary situation to walk into. And I think it's amazing that we have such an established and just well-funded and organization that's been doing it the right way for so long to help these individuals as they come to our community. So I'm really grateful for what you do for Dublin City Schools for sure, and certainly our surrounding communities. You all do wonderful work. So yes, absolutely. So I also wanted to ask, as the administrative director, I know you're involved in many hiring decisions. So what are the qualities you're looking for when you're hiring people that you're trusting to provide this quality support service?
Well, as there are so many organizations, so I'm sure that as we are looking for someone who can align and support our values and our culture in our organization, we work with a lot of new Americans. So we are looking for very diverse, culturally diverse, and just the diversity is one of our values. So this is someone we are looking for into hiring. But we're also looking for someone who can connect on both levels with our participants, and also we need to connect with our fundraisers and to the community, because we are working like in the middle settings of helping. We operate taxpayers' money, so we need to provide them a huge amount of trust that we can operate and support them and where they want to invest their money, and we want to connect and be trustworthy to our participants, and this is a huge value for us. Trust, connection, relationship. So all the communication, interpersonal skills are very important in the hiring process. Cultural competences, like I said, resilience and patience. So as well as integrity with the mission, with the services that we offer, because we are mission driven. We are looking into those changes in our participants. So integrity as well as accountability, because as I said, we have a need to connect with our funders, and our funders look for accountability and very reporting standards. So someone who can follow through on both like personal level, but also accountability, and be able to manage well, adapt, receive feedback. Hiring is also a challenge and a blessing, because when we find those people who become a part of a family, we do consider our team like a family. It's a huge blessing and a happy moment.
No, I think that's great. And obviously it's so important to get that right fit, right? And then obviously when they're there, they might need some coaching, but if you know they're there for the right reasons and they align well, their values and your mission and all of those things come together and they're willing to learn and be trained, then and usually it ends up being a great situation. So I think it's awesome that we have people that are joining teams like yours who are doing such great, so many great things in our communities. So this is great. Absolutely. All right, Dr. Moss, I've got some questions I'd love to move over to you. So when a student's interested in human services, but not really sure which avenue to choose or which pathway to choose within the field, what support services does Columbus State offer to help them find the right fit?
Yeah, Kevin, that's a great question, because I think a lot of folks may have a general idea. I think all of us had different ideas at the start of our career or at the start of our education. We ended up in very different places. So it's important to have support in making that decision and knowing that you don't have to make it immediately. I think that's an important thing to point out too. Lots of folks will enter college perhaps with an undeclared major. And maybe you start with one major and you end up switching, and there can be a lot of overlap in terms of the courses you might take for your general education requirements. So you can take a little bit of pressure off yourself if you're already feeling that, desire to narrow it down now. I think one thing I wish I would have done more of is talk to professionals and professors in the field who had experience working in different roles. And I wish I would have asked more questions, because I think it just would have enriched my own knowledge and then decision making about the path that I pursued. So certainly the professors who are teaching courses, your instructors in Columbus State and other colleges, they're going to be able to speak to some of these kind of finer points of what it's like to work in certain roles and what are some of the perhaps drawbacks of certain types of pathways. So I think they're one definitely underutilized resource. Formally, though, our college has a network of advisors. We have both advisors at sort of the general level who will give you guidance on different technical things that you might need to know about social work versus psychology versus perhaps human service work that's outside of my department, or you have, again, faculty advisors who have designated times to meet with you. I hold 6 to 8 office hours a week just to meet with students and talk about career pathways. So those sort of formal processes are available. I think in general they're again not utilized, and I think people feel sometimes embarrassed to ask questions, or they think there are maybe bad questions. There are no bad questions. There's so much information to take in about these careers. So if you have a question, ask it. If you can't tell from the 3 of us here, 4 of us, we love talking about what we do. We'll be happy to, most of us would love to have conversations about this with you. We also hold a number of different career fairs at the college throughout the year. So we will set up in our courtyard just tables with different fields of study represented. We'll have something we call Major Fest, where you can learn about the different majors and then the different lines of work. And I think more than anything, this is a very social profession. So keep the cards, the business cards of the folks that you encounter. Keep the contact information. Make those calls. Even consider talking to a school counselor, right? Just about career exploration. They may have some insight that they could share as well. So yeah, there are a number of different ways to explore that, formally and informally.
I think that's great advice, and I love hearing all of the ways that students can explore. And to your point, I've always said I really wish I would have been more of a curious student when I was in school and had that opportunity and all that time ahead of me to make decisions and just developed relationships with professors, even in high school, being more thoughtful about to your teachers. Hey, did you always think you'd be a teacher? Were there other things? And you'd be shocked to find the number of teachers who didn't start out in education and did other things first, right? So I was a school counselor for 11 years before I entered this role. And prior to that, I spent 5 years in sales and marketing. So you never know if you don't ask the questions. And I think it's so valuable to just hear everyone's stories and to then create your own based on this collected feedback that you've gathered over as much time as you needed. So I love that advice. So next question I have for you is, what are some of the educational pathways at Columbus State related to human services, and how do they differ from programs maybe at a 4-year university?
Yeah, so we have 2 specific tracks to social work at Columbus State. One is housed in my department. It's our Associate of Applied Science in Social Work. And we also have an Associate of Arts in Social Work. And while they may sort of land you in the same place ultimately, or a very similar place, the focus, the educational focus is going to be different for each track. And we have on the Associate of Applied Science, the word applied means that we are giving you opportunities to practice your clinical skills and to practice applying the knowledge that you're gaining in the classroom in a professional setting. So students in our program will have an opportunity within their second year. This is a 2-year degree. Within the second year, they'll have an opportunity to be placed in a real treatment setting, perhaps, or in a community center, or in any kind of social or human service organization that we have an agreement with. And you'll have a field instructor there, and you'll work anywhere between about 10 and a half to 14 hours to gain some professional experience with real clients or real consumers, real patients. You get an opportunity in our program to be placed based on your interests. So if you say, I'm really interested in working broadly in mental health, or I'm really interested in working in more of community support, whatever the population might be, we tend to have a good representation of that population in one of our practicum sites. So you'll get that opportunity and support from the faculty as well. There's a faculty member who's assigned to work with you throughout that placement, to meet with you several times. And having been someone who, would hire folks as an administrator in my past work life, I really appreciated the students who came from Columbus State having had that early exposure to human service work. I always found that those students had sort of worked through the normal anxieties that we all have and done so in a way that helped them gain confidence as a professional. So I think there's tremendous value, even if you're more introverted, like I am, definitely more introverted. Even if you're more introverted, there's so much value in just getting to do some of the work with support and supervision and learning what you like and maybe what you don't like as much and what you might be drawn to. Again, more professionals to connect with that way, more questions that you can ask. So you get a lot of social work focused courses in that particular track. You get the practicum experience. And we also have an articulation agreement with colleges like OSU and Capital where you can transfer those credits to then earn your bachelor's in social work within about 2 years of then going on to that college. So it sort of divides the education in two. And I think that's also really valuable because to Tatiana's earlier point, first generation college experiences, especially, they can be really stressful. There's a lot of information to take in. There are universities and campuses to learn. You got to figure out where to park. So much to do. So kind of dividing it into chunks that way, I think, is very digestible. And that's the advantage of going to maybe a 2-year first. I'll just say briefly, because I don't want to take too much time. The Associate of Arts in Social Work has a lot of similar coursework, but there is no practicum component. And perhaps students aren't ready to perhaps have that practicum experience yet, or perhaps they have a legal issue because working in our profession, there are some barriers if you've had some legal charges and convictions in your background. Again, that is getting a little bit better, as it should, but there can be wait times, amounts of time you have to wait before you're able to be credentialed or to be certified by Medicaid to bill services. So for those students, it doesn't make sense to go into the practicum immediately, and they get maybe more of their general coursework. That degree is also transferable to Ohio State, Capital, and several other colleges within our region. So those are two versions of what students are most interested in, often go well beyond even the bachelor's because they, I think, receive enough support through that sort of broken down approach.
I love learning about these types of opportunities, and I really want more of our kids to prioritize the experience piece that you just talked about, because even when we're in high school with our high school students, I am just constantly preaching, please get experience, whether if it's a part-time job, if you have something you're interested in, can you do a shadow day? Can you go out and get an internship? Can you find a mentor just to reach out to and ask some questions about things that you want to know about? Because the experience is what lands you not only in a job in the future, it's what lands you in the right job. It's what shows you what the work actually is, and it introduces you to what it can turn into when you see the growth of how certain careers started out and then what they turn into later, and then you have people to connect with and to network with. And I just think so many students prioritize their list of post-secondary education options based on rankings lists, and they don't focus enough on which ones are going to give me the experience I'm looking for, and sooner the better, because college is expensive. And if you have to change your mind years into a program because that's when you finally got experience, it sets you way back. And if you can get some experience before you even choose a program, and then in your first or second year of a program, the value of that, it can't be overstated, in my opinion, in terms of just what that can do for helping you find the right fit sooner and to spend your money wisely when you're there. So I love that you share that.
Thank you. If I can make another.
So moving on.
Sorry.
Yeah, please do. Please.
Just a quick plug for this kind of experience that you're speaking about, Kevin. One of the first things I ever did was volunteer for a crisis line. And I did it during my undergraduate time, but you can also do this as a teenager. There are teen lines where you can get trained to support other teenagers who are struggling with crisis. It's a great way to learn some of those basic skills and kind of get a feel for what it's like to be engaged in those slightly stressful conversations, but you get a lot of training and support in that too. So just want to plug that quickly before we move on.
I'm so glad you did. And honestly, I feel like I was about to skip ahead and I want to talk about too, the importance of, sometimes you can't get that experience until college, especially in a field that has very protective privacy regulations for a good reason. But there are ways to get training in this area, even as a high school student. So we have a new organization that recently partnered with our school district called Hope Squad. And it really is a program full of students who are caring, who want to make a difference, who were identified by their classmates as kids who are good listeners and who they trust and would talk to if they had a mental health crisis. So these students are not being trained to be counselors. We are not teaching them to be the ones to solve the problems in these scenarios, but we're just teaching them to notice red flags that go unnoticed often. And we're trying to help them see the little phrases that they might start seeing in a virtual setting or in a hallway or in a classroom, and to say, hey, I heard you said that and you kind of sounded like you were joking, but are you okay? And then you just got to figure out if it's somebody that really needs help. And if they do, those students are trained on how to connect those people with the right professionals in our school setting, and then connected with the right professionals in the professional setting. So I think if you're a student, you're hearing this and you think, gosh, I'd be really interested, I think Hope Squad's a great thing to reach out and learn about. We have a peer collaboration program, which is all about peer supporting peers in different ways in the school building. So there's a lot of great ways to just see if you might like this kind of work. And to your point, just talk to your school counselors, talk to the people in your building who do this, talk to the school social workers that we're fortunate enough to have in our school district. It's an amazing program. And these are people that would be more than happy to sit down with you and share their knowledge and experiences to help you decide if this might be a good fit. So I think it's amazing that you bring that up. So the last thing I wanted to ask you, as someone with extensive experience in teaching and, as a professional who's been in practicing counseling in addition to teaching, how have you managed to find balance between those roles? And what are the self-care strategies that you've found to be effective in a field that often leads to that compassion fatigue or burnout?
I love this question. I love talking about this too. I think that because this is such a human-centric profession, it's very normal that we are going to absorb a lot of the stress from the environments that we're in. We're going to absorb and sort of internalize pressures that we're under to complete things by a certain time or to help people who are in very dire circumstances in some cases. And burnout is very high in our profession. The turnover rate can be high. And so I love that our profession is becoming more mindful of that and thinking about not just the client or the consumer, who's very important, right? But the human service workers who are really at the center of this as well. So for me, I think it is about, and we've all kind of spoken about, finding the things that we love to do. It really helps to find that career path and explore the things that excite you when you think about going to work. Everybody has days where they don't want to go to work, or everybody has days, regardless of what you do, where it's a little bit stressful to think about your to-dos. But if more days than not, you wake up going, I really love this work, I really love what I get to do, that makes a difference. So keep searching for that, and know that it's okay if you don't find it right away, but keep looking, because that helps. But I think always reflecting, finding a way to reflect in my day is important. How am I feeling when I wake up? How am I feeling when I end the day? Am I carrying something kind of around in my mind? Or am I able to kind of process it and let it go? Having support people in your life is really important as a human service worker. Who can you talk with? Especially having colleagues like the folks on this call, where we can kind of debrief with each other after things that are stressful. Seeking your own counseling. I've done this throughout my career. There's no shame in a therapist going to therapy as a client. In fact, it's going to help you in your work. It's going to help you be more mindful in your own work if you are healthy and feeling whole. So I think having a daily and kind of a regular method of making sure that I'm checking in with myself, taking breaks, not trying to push through everything, but taking vacation time when it's vacation time, taking time with family and friends, and really asking for support from folks who are able to offer us that support. That to me has helped me stay excited about this profession for almost 20 years now. So still feeling good about it.
That's amazing and great advice. And we're kind of getting close to that hour mark. So I feel like at this point we can start to kind of wrap up. I'm looking, I don't see any questions over there. So I do want to just, give you all one last opportunity, or, even Shelby and Tatiana, if you have some of those self-care strategies that you'd like to share that help you or that are provided by your organizations. I think these are always things that we're trying to make our students think about, so that they're being thoughtful about making sure that they're feeling like their best selves when and doing the things they can control to do that.
Absolutely. I would say one thing that's been really helpful for me in doing this work is learning to compartmentalize, because it is a job that, like Dr. Moss said, that you can really take on a lot from what you're hearing from your clients. And so learning when work is over, that we're done with work, and to focus on, whatever you have going on in your personal life, and making sure that you're using that time outside of work to take care of you, and learn to let go as much as possible and not take that home with you. So leaving work at work and home at home, and trying to separate the two. Inevitably, there's going to be times where that is really challenging, but I would say that's an incredibly important practice to try and start as as soon as possible. And I think it's hard being in high school and college because your work is your life right now, right? And so it's a skill that takes time to really hone in on and get good at.
Well, I would mention a proper nutrition, exercise, sun exposure, and just basic activities. These are all really good for mental health. Help me a ton. So whenever I start feeling drained or see like my mind going like a little bit more negative route, I know that I probably haven't been to the gym or just wasn't on a walk or was not outside or spent too much on my laptop or spent too much at work. So something, nutrition, water, sun exposure, physical activity. And then a lot of practices right now available through YouTube online, where just I like yoga nidra, where for 10 minutes you can just practice some. Well, it's just a short practice, but actually helps you to rejuvenate and help you to feel relaxed and feel like get some tiredness away. And simple mindfulness exercises, breathing, talking to your peer, even though sometimes peer pressure can be actually mentally draining, but seeking people and seeking help through people, it's very important. Like sometimes people think of, even in the work we do, that we have to make some like drastic changes in life, but we notice that people just come and you actually listen with the intent to give all your attention to them, and they find it very helpful because maybe it's for the first time someone listened to them and someone actually be engaged and someone actually be interested in what they're saying. And we hear so many feedback like this, and sometimes it can be, we challenge our youth, for example, and sometimes they even may cry and say, why do you care so much? We are not even siblings and we are not even relatives, and we're like, we actually do care about you. So seek help through people and through proper nutrition, exercise, hydration.
I think it's great. I love that. I talk to students a lot often about when they're having a hard time, really just sometimes the best thing you can do is just do something kind for someone else, and just giving yourself that natural, dopamine hit by doing something kind, seeing someone else smile because of something you did for them, or looking around your home and looking for something that your mom always wants you to do, but she has to ask you 5 times, just do it and see if she notices. And you'd be shocked at how good it feels just to do something that benefits the lives of someone you care about, or even somebody you don't even know, and just a complete stranger. So I think things like that are great ways to just make yourself feel better. Well, I can't thank you all enough for making time for this. I love that our students who are interested in human services will have this as a resource moving forward. We'll find different ways to incorporate it into classroom lessons and to create clips out of it and to do things that I know I don't kid myself thinking that students are going to make an hour to their leisure time to maybe listen to some of these conversations that we're putting out there. But there's a lot of ways that we can get it in front of them in creative ways to help them learn about areas of interest. So I just am grateful to all of you. I know some of you will be the career fair that we have coming up in about a week and a half. And if you're not, I know you have representatives from your organizations that'll be there. So college and career fair that's coming up, it's been a great way for our kids to start to learn how to network and just to learn about opportunities that are not currently on their radar. So thank you for being here, and I hope you all enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thanks for listening. Please do not hesitate to reach out with any questions about the many resources we have in Dublin City Schools related to exploring post-secondary options. My email address is patton_kevin@dublinschools.net. I also want to give special thanks to student intern Cam Williams from the DCS Media Marketing Academy. Cam designed the cover art for the show and will be sharing regular updates via social media. Be sure to follow Cam's posts at DCS Pathways Pod on Instagram and TikTok. Hope to see you next week.